I'll kick off the TV show version.
Cool. You do you, Nick.
Where should I be looking? The camera's in kind of a weird spot. Oh well. Welcome to the Shamelist Picture Show podcast picture show. Today is episode 2 of the TV show, but episode 12 of the podcast. We're trucking along nicely. And today half of us are live in the MCTV studio. Our favorite co-host, Michael Byers, is at his home in Milwaukee. Today we'll be discussing one of my favorite John Carpenter films, though Halloween clearly is amazing as well. In the Mouth of Madness, really cool Lovecraftian take that approaches Lovecraft and I don't know if subtle's the right word, but it definitely focuses on the madness rather than the creatures, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, the creatures are very subtle, but the madness is out and open. We're excited to keep the TV show going, but welcome and get ready as we start our official podcast. Sweet. All right, let me lay down this tasty intro if I can remember what screen I have it saved on. Episode of the Shamelist Picture Show podcast. I'm Michael Byers, and with me, as always, is the Sutter Kane to my John Trent,
Nick Richards.
Before I get into what we're watching today, I just want to throw out a very special thanks to our first ever sponsor. They are a company by the name of Vinegar Syndrome. Vinegar Syndrome is a restoration and distribution company with catalogs of hundreds of feature films produced primarily between the 1960s and 1980s. We'll touch a little bit on them later on because I'm going to talk about one of their releases that I've seen. Nick hasn't, so we'll see how well that goes. They were really cool. They liked the idea of our podcast, and they're pretty big. They're pretty respected company, so the fact that they took a chance on us is pretty awesome.
We're gonna edit in ABBA at that point, right? Take a chance on me.
I can
do.
Totally. Okay. But on today's episode, we'll be discussing John Carpenter's highly underrated In the Mouth of Madness. Released in 1994 from a script written by Michael De Luca, the film tells the story of an insurance investigator by the name of John Trent, who's hired by a big-time publisher to locate their most successful author, Sutter Kane, who appears to be missing. Last anyone heard, Kane was finishing his most recent book called In the Mouth of Madness. Kane is very successful, but it's said his work can drive some readers mad. Accompanied by Kane's editor, Linda Stiles, Trent sends off to the fictional town of Hobbs End to find Kane and retrieve his book. The film, while considered a flop at the time, made the Cahiers du Cinema's top 10 list of 1995 and is, in my opinion, one of Carpenter's last great films. The film stars Sam Neill, Julie Carmen, Jürgen Prochnow, that's a fun name,
Vito the
and
Carpathian?
Charlton... What?
Is that Vito the Carpathian?
I think? I'm not very familiar with Jürgen Prochnow.
Sorry.
And Charlton Heston's also in the movie.
This one could drive you absolutely mad.
The riots began because the stores could not meet the demand of Sutter Kane's novel, In the Mouth of Madness.
Kane disappeared 2 months ago without a trace.
He's the guy that writes horror books.
You can forget about Stephen King. Kane outsells them all. I need to know if he's alive or dead, and I need that book.
It's a setup. I just have to work out how it's set up.
Kane's writing has been known to have an effect on his readers.
See this? It's a map.
This whole thing has been staged.
You just get out.
This is not reality.
It's all happening for real, Trent.
I know this book will drive people crazy. I hope so. The movie comes out next month.
So this was on my shame list, which bums me out because John Carpenter is probably one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Yet there's still a couple black spots in his career that I have not seen, but I've seen most, if not all, of his big ones throughout the 80s. But I loved this movie, Nick.
I'm glad
you told me. I'm glad you told me to watch this movie. This was fantastic.
That challenge list that I put together was very catered towards. We're starting to get to know each other's tastes a little bit better, but they're definitely in my top realm of horror. So they're not even really horror as much as they are psychological thrillers that I kind of.
I don't know. I think In the Mouth of Madness actually might be one of Carpenter's scarier films.
Yeah, this goes into a conversation that we've had before of just the difficulty of defining what horror is. I guess if you go as simply as if it's scary, then it's horror. You know, that casts a much wider net.
Yeah, and it's also difficult too because I am one of the I'm not one of those horror purists who believe that horror. This film, this film is a horror film. This film is a thriller. In my mind, a thriller is just a classy horror film.
Right. Yeah.
When Silence of the Lambs was sweeping at the Oscars, everyone started calling it a thriller, and it's it's a fucking horror film.
Right.
A horror film is winning all these Oscars. Don't try to class that up. I personally think if the movie fills you with any sort of tension or dread, it's a horror film.
Sure.
I've heard some people say, "Oh, it's a tension film." It's a horror film.
And shouldn't all films have tension?
Yeah, you'd hope. I imagine the Care Bears movie has some tension to it.
Okay, the Care Bears, the sequel to it, the Care Bears movie 2, that movie scared the living piss out of me when I was a kid. I have it on DVD. And they go to this summer camp where there's this kid who becomes possessed by a demon and then is trying to capture all the Care Bears in this crystal chandelier. It is that is genuine horror.
I was just trying to make a joke, but you came in with some real life.
Let me get real serious about the Care Bears for a second.
Totally, you got really into the whole Care Bears thing. It kind of alarmed me just a little bit.
Oh, that will be on your Shamelist episode upcoming, and you will go, okay, Nick, it's another lame cartoon that you're making me watch, but I get what you're talking about.
That was a pretty scary, lame cartoon, Nick. So f*** you. Oh God, there's just so much to talk about with this movie. I'm trying to process where we should begin.
Well, you've already stated that you really enjoyed it.
Yes.
But I think kind of a reoccurring concept that we've come up against in our show to date is how did it meet up against your expectations?
It's funny, this is a movie I've had on my shelf for a long time, and I bought it because it was John Carpenter, and it was one of his movies that I do very little about. Like I said, his output, think about John Carpenter. He has had one of the greatest track records of not only any filmmaker, of not only any horror filmmaker, but of any filmmaker. You think about it from 1976 is I think when Assault on Precinct 13 came out through 1988, which is Big Trouble in Little China. Hit after hit after hit.
Is prolific. I mean, in the realm of Spielberg from that same era. Spielberg continued on and had a bit of certainly less dark, but the way that he could churn out movies that a very large segment of people could relate to in one way or another, I'd put them in that same category.
No, exactly. In a lot of ways, John Carpenter is the Spielberg of horror. just because no one has as much consistent but yet hidden style like both of them do. They can handle directors, and some of their work is before it's honestly before its time. Or in a weird way, Mouth of Madness, I feel like if it would have came out in the 80s, it would definitely be one of his classics. But the 90s was like a weird sinkhole of suck when it comes to horror. So, like, 95, that was right around the time that Scream came out. So
that was horror's awkward teen years.
Yeah, so, like, people weren't, like, expecting John Carpenter to throw out, like, a gothic horror film about an author.
Yeah.
With Sam Neill.
Can I also take a moment to, though everyone knows this, I think it doesn't get brought up enough, how badass is it that John Carpenter does all of his own soundtrack work?
I have always thought this. One of the greatest experiences of my life was last year. My wife and I, we went to go see John Carpenter live as he was playing his hits.
Oh.
Like, because it was a mixture of his hits and, like, you know, from his movies, and then, like, things that he's been putting out recently with his son. Which is kind of cute because him and his son are playing together. Right. And John Carpenter has like this great like Carpenter dance that he does when he's on stage because he's really getting into it. And like nothing gives me goosebumps nearly as much as like hearing the Assault on Precinct 13 theme come on, and like the hairs on my arms stand up, and then like they like rockify some of it because then you'll just like there's always guitar in that song, but then they'll just like start shredding on the guitar. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I might have to throw like a sound clip of the Assault on Precinct 13 theme in here because it is fucking baller.
You get a lot of writer-directors, director-producers, even director-actors, but not a lot of director soundtrack composers. That is very cool.
I also think I'm starting to believe that Carpenter has a chubby for like for metal because like he's been like his later films started infusing more and more some metal notes into soundtracks, and I was like, I think Carpenter's a secret heavy metal fan.
Well, and he doesn't just do a good enough job either. You could very easily say, well, the fact that he's directing and music, which is a very different kind of art, he did a decent job. No, I mean, the Halloween theme is so iconic, and up there with Jaws or any of the other, you know, these where you hear a few notes and you know exactly what film that's from.
Yeah, and there's been other filmmakers that have done their own music. Robert Rodriguez composes the scores to his own films.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, he does. He has his studio and he also edits all of his own films too. And I think that might be one of my problems with him is it's all too personal. Like since he does everything, no one's there to tell him, you know what, maybe you should cut this scene down. And then I don't know if he does all the composing, but he will write pieces of music. Is Clint Eastwood? He plays piano, so he'll write some pieces of music for his films.
Joss Whedon also has done some of his own writing.
That being said, how many of those filmmakers can you point out a piece of their music and be like, oh, that was Joss Whedon or that was Robert Rodriguez? Yeah. And John Carpenter is a rock star. Especially now that he's touring and
legitimately
a rock star. Yeah, I completely got lost in a fellatio session of John Carpenter there. So what were we talking about?
And that's our show.
That was the John Carpenter hour of Nick and Mike.
I have a couple of my usual kind of like, oh, did you catch this little thing that might mean nothing but really intrigued me kind of notes.
Okay.
But, you mentioned the screenwriter in your opening. Also wrote a film that we mentioned very briefly in our Buffy episode, Freddy's Dead.
I love Freddy's Dead. So many people hate that film. But...
It's the Freddy film to watch if you like the stand-up comic Freddy.
Yeah.
Like I agree. There's a very slow transition from pure horror Freddy in the original through to like, you know, what's the deal with kids getting sliced up by dream murderers, Freddy from 6, and then it jumps right back to the, you know, that pure horror Freddy in New Nightmare. Yeah, and no, I still love that scene where like Freddy is drooling and playing Atari and goes, great graphics.
I'm not like you! I don't want to be like you! Not like you!
Now I'm playing with power!
Alright! Super Spencer! Yeah!
Totally.
Like, to me, that is just amazing.
They're spoofing the "This Is Your Brain on Drugs" commercial with Johnny Depp's
Yep.
cameo.
Alright, once again. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Question?
Yeah! What are you on? Looks like a frying pan and some eggs to me.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff in Freddy's Dead.
I've actually been excited to show that one to Amanda, because we're eventually going to get to it, and then, like, just because, like, it does a lot for his backstory as well. Michael DeLuca, he did a lot, and he actually went on to become kind of a big-time producer. Like,
Yeah.
He wrote Freddy's Dead, and he wrote this film, and he was an executive producer on this film as well. But then, like, he did The Long Kiss Goodnight, which I actually kind of love, and he did he wrote Judge Dredd. He's an executive producer on Boogie Nights, Blade, Lost in Space, Pleasantville, American History X, Detroit Rock City.
A lot of big ones.
The greatest film of all time, Little Nicky.
Of course.
So, 50 Shades of Grey, which I wouldn't be proud of, but
But it's in there.
yeah, he made some money.
Right,
I love that he did Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, and then the next year he did Captain Phillips.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anyways, that's Michael DeLuca.
So I got a little In the Mouth of Madness anecdote.
Okay, tell me your anecdote.
And I'll preface it by saying I'm not somebody who has a lot of regrets in my life.
Oh, God.
I'm one that believes that the moments in your life that you are kind of sad about tend to be learning experiences.
Yeah.
But this is one of the very few pure, unfiltered regrets of my life. It's my honeymoon. This is 15 years back now, and we did
Your honeymoon is one of your greatest regrets in life.
just one moment of the honeymoon.
Okay.
And,
I wanted to try to trick you into something.
Yeah. Love you, babe. And we did a little road trip. We were, living in Wisconsin at the time, but drove to Ohio, did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, New York, bounced around.
Oh, I've always wanted to go.
The coast, and we went up to Toronto.
Okay.
And while we were in Toronto, we stopped at this really cool thrift store. And the selection they had at the time, there wasn't a whole lot, but I went over into the book section and I found just the dust jacket for the prop in the film, a hardcover book, In the Mouth of Madness.
What?
And I was 19 at the time. I already had seen the movie and really enjoyed it, but I wasn't a filmmaker yet, so I didn't understand that the dust jacket was the only part of the prop and that they probably just wrapped it around any old book. So I saw the dust jacket and thought, oh, but the book's not there, so I'm not going to buy this. And to this day, once it all clicked, I immediately regretted it, but then I regretted it even more when I realized that that's all there was to it. And I did not buy the Sutter Kane In the Mouth of Madness dust jacket.
Little naive Nick.
Yeah. Wah, wah.
That's actually really sad. I want to know how they got a hold of it.
Right.
Actually.
And did they even realize what it was?
Yeah, that's really interesting. But no, I guess what the best way to tackle this film was. Did you have more things you were going to ask if I noticed before I got into
There's a bunch of little stuff, but I'm sure it'll come up in conversation.
All right, the things I liked about this film is I'm always a fan of when you learn enough about a filmmaker that you kind of know what they like, and then you see their influences in there. Like, I love that this film at the beginning is a pretty much it feels like a noir film, with Sam Neill, and then it just becomes like a psychological mindfuck movie.
Yeah, with all the framing devices in the beginning where they, he's in the mental institution, but he's being interviewed talking about the past. And then, there's the whole book framing of, no, you're actually in the beginning of this story, and it jumps back to the beginning. But then there's framing devices within framing devices with other framing devices built in. It's really fascinating. But then that all dissipates early into the story, but in a way that works.
It's also interesting, too, with the whole idea of a beginning in a asylum, because it's a very Lovecraftian thing to do. But then it also brings out in the whole aspect of an unreliable narrator. Can you believe anything that John Trent is even telling us?
Absolutely.
And I also love that, I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. I feel like I've mentioned that a lot. Halloween is in my opinion, one of the greatest films ever made. His work is usually very taut and tense. Everything is very deliberate. It's slow, but not boring.
Yeah.
And I love that in this film he allows himself to go into, for lack of a better term, these flights of fancy, but yet it never feels like it's without direction.
Yeah.
So it felt like he expounded upon a little bit of what he was trying to do in The Thing, which The Thing even it's very small, minimal, intense, just crazy creatures. This one, it just feels like it has the biggest scope out of some of Carpenter's films, even bigger than Escape from New York, because even Escape from New York felt very small in a lot of ways. This just feels like he's allowing himself to open up a world a little bit more, but yet, like I said, never feels about direction. The film never felt like it overstayed its welcome. It moved very quick.
Something that I noticed on this particular watching that I never noticed in the past is they spend a lot of time with, like, not really anything moving the story along. They'll and I think it's to build up this psychological tension, which is nice. The first half of the film, there's not a lot of exposition. You get some in the scenes where he goes in and he's talking with Kane's book people. But then when he's reading the books and having these flashbacks, or not flashbacks, dream sequences, and then even when Styles gets introduced into this car trip, like this car trip takes a really long time where they just play with the kind of mental toying, the puppeteering that's happening on the way. All of that could have taken a lot less time, but as you said, it never feels boring, which is great.
Yeah, and like there's just I kind of got like Wizard of Oz vibes as they're trying to find Hobbs End, and like just that crazy dream sequence, maybe, I don't know, like entrance to hell type thing that was going on with Styles driving. And then Sam Neill has that great line, "Oh, we're there already?"
Who keeps a bike horn in their glove box?
Exactly.
That was so random.
It was. Or was it? Like, this never occurred to me until just this second, but, I think it goes without saying this episode's going to have spoilers.
There's the bike that plays
the
a
kid they hit
prominent...
with the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about the whole movie kind of being on a loop because of the ending...
That could... The horn could be simply foreshadowing, or it could be Sutter, Kane's character, writing in that warning to John... here's the first of my little, hey, did you notice this thing that may not be intentional at all, but I'm sure it is because I think that way? So the boy on the bike, he had 2 playing cards in the spokes of his wheel, right?
Yes.
Do you remember what those 2 cards were?
I watched the movie like 2 weeks ago, so no.
One was the Jack, and one was a Joker. And Jack is another name for John. So it could be connecting John Trent's character to this fool, this tragic fool that... And maybe it means nothing.
Maybe, but I kind of like where you're going with that. Though I want to talk a bit about, like, as always, this episode's going to jump all around. I want to talk about Sutter Kane a little bit as a novelist before we get into some of the deeper themes of religion and whatnot. Yeah. My mind always goes back to the opening scene where John Trent is reading the book. I don't remember which book he's reading at the moment, but he's reading one of Kane's books. Though they kind of hint that he read all of them, like in like one sitting.
Right.
He's got this way of writing that really hooks you in, but he's like saying how many cliches there are, and I was like, I like to imagine that Sutter Kane is actually just this hack novelist who just has this power behind him.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, like he's John Trent is living in a book, in a movie of horror cliches.
Right.
Treated differently, but it's like here is this an author that outsells Stephen King, even though in a lot of ways he kind of is Stephen King.
Yeah, I think there's some very intentional reference to that.
He's a hack author who's just putting a bunch of cliches in his book. You know, as much as I like Stephen King, sometimes his books. Well, when you write as much as he does, every so often you're gonna fall into a couple traps.
Sure.
But like, I just love this idea that like Sutter Kane's actually not a good novelist. He's just got the old ones behind him, so he's
and Lovecraftian Cthulhu mythos has become its own cliche in a way. It's parodying itself. So if you have the genuine, great old ones conveying their madness thoughts to an author, it would be cliches because it has become a cliche of itself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and real quick, talking about Sutter Kane, and this is I'm curious if you noticed this. Sutter Kane has that line, did I ever tell you my favorite color is blue?
I drew extra attention to it in this episode, but couldn't come up with a particular meaning.
Well, first they have the very obvious scene where he's on the. It's one of my favorite scenes where he's on the bus and everything is blue.
Yeah.
And I found out through the commentary track that they didn't put a blue filter on; they just painted everything blue.
I assumed that it was a combination of the two, but I could tell that their clothes had been swapped out with blue versions of what they were wearing before.
But I was trying to draw attention to that as well, and maybe I'm wrong, but I noticed this at least once or twice throughout the movie. Whenever they had a close up on the actors' eyes, their eyes are blue now.
Oh, I did. You could see the irises and pupils starting to split and divide in some of the people.
Yeah,
but
so
I didn't catch that.
It's proving the power that Sutter Kane has, because whenever they did a close up of an actor's face, their eyes are blue.
Huh. That's cool.
I've only noticed it once or twice, but it makes me want to go back and see if that theory is correct.
Right. I know I certainly know that they pay a lot of attention to the eyes, particularly with people that have read it. They have the blood coming out of the corners of the eyes. They have the eyes splitting, and there's certainly, even the ones where the pupils weren't dividing, they had some kind of dreaminess to them, a sense that they were a symptom of this change that was happening in them, but I didn't in particular notice that they were blue. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's just a little thing that I noticed. But I'm just kind of going through my list now and just mentioning things I really liked. I really loved the Stephen King and the overly done H.P. Lovecraft vibe, especially because at a time where Lovecraft wasn't adapted as often. You had Reanimator and there was another one the same director of Reanimator did. I cannot think of it. Stuart Gordon did it as well. I'd never seen it, so that's why I can't think of the title of it right now. But you had this, but it wasn't Lovecraft wasn't a big thing. I remember when I was in high school I was in a bookstore in Chicago trying to find Lovecraft, and there was none. He wasn't as easy to find.
Yeah.
But now it's there's the podcast dedicated to just Lovecraft.
Right. Did you catch the Lovecraft reference in the title of the movie?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact title of his story, but isn't it like The Mountains of Madness or?
Well, Innsmouth is the name of a town that gets brought up in several Lovecraft
there's that, and
stories.
there's Arkham as well.
Yeah. So In the Mouth of Madness very easily, turns into Innsmouth of Madness.
Yeah, but he also has a book, something like along the lines with The Mountain of Madness. Hold on. I've got it pulled up, I believe.
Okay.
Actually, At the Mountains of Madness, he has a book. And then actually, from what I read, too, Sutter Kane's novels have similar titles to H.P. Lovecraft stories. So, like, The Whisper in the Dark is The Whisper in Darkness, The Thing in the Basement, The Thing on the Doorstep.
Nice.
Haunter Out of Time, Haunter of the Dark / Shadow Out of Time. So.
Okay.
And apparently continue.
Hobbs End, too, apparently has... I wasn't able to track down any particular sources, but Hobbs End has apparently been used in several stories as a place of demonic influence, or Old Hob is another name for the devil.
Yeah, and then it's also I didn't catch that one at first. I had to read up on that one, but my instant thought was when they went to, like, was it New Hampshire?
Right.
Which that really fantastic scene of him just like, if I cut these out, I can make this state.
I love that.
It's funny. I looked at it like he built it, and I'm just staring at it. It's like, what the fuck is it? Amanda goes, it's New Hampshire. It's like, how the hell do you know it's New Hampshire? Because she's like, I went to school. But my first thought was like it was making fun of Stephen King a little bit, how everything is set in Maine, and I think he's got like his main towns he uses, and his main towns.
Yeah, Lovecraft sets a lot of his stuff in Massachusetts.
Yep.
So which kind of pins New Hampshire as this midway point between the two.
I knew that both King and was Maine and H.P. Lovecraft was Massachusetts. I never thought of New Hampshire as being like in the middle.
Yeah.
Real quick, unrelated, kind of related. Mentioning earlier that you found that book sleeve in Canada. Where were you in Canada?
Toronto.
That's near Ontario, right?
I don't know. I don't think so. Or is that in Ontario? Is Ontario a region or a? I'm not a.
I'm only asking because I'm on the Wikipedia page right now for In the Mouth of Madness.
It was shot in Canada, right?
Part of it.
Yeah.
The exterior of the Black Church seen in Hobbs End is actually the Cathedral of Transfiguration, which is an amazing name.
Yeah.
It is the Slavic Byzantine Rite Roman Catholic former cathedral located in Markham, Ontario.
Huh.
So maybe you were near it. I don't know.
I could have been.
I keep getting distracted because of the yard work outside,
yeah.
So I'm apologizing now if this doesn't make complete sense. But so no, I really like the kind of commenting on the popularity of Stephen King with the influence of Lovecraft. And from what I read somewhere, it was whenever Sam D was reading Sutter King's work out loud, he was actually just reading Lovecraft.
Nice.
Which is a nice little reference.
And then there's that
continue.
bit, speaking of spoilers, there's that bit in the end where Sutter Kane actually like tears himself out of reality, and that door.
That was such a bad effect.
Yeah, that pulsing door pulls away, and you can see the words of the novel on the opposite side.
That was super cool.
I was trying to read it, and there's a bit about like somebody who's bald who wishes he had hair, and I was trying to piece the bits together, but I wonder what the source was of that copy that they used.
I'd be interested too. And before we get into like the big themes of the book, I want to talk about the hotel they stay at, or like I think it's own. That's also a Lovecraft reference. I'm not familiar with it. I had to look it up, but Mrs. Pickman, who owns it, it's a reference to Pickman's Model, which is a story, apparently a famous story by Lovecraft. But like that whole bit threw me for a loop because at first like, oh, this sweet old lady, and then like Styles talks about like what she ends up doing in the book where she murders her husband with an axe or something,
and then at the end.
like when he's handcuffed to her leg and naked, and then in the basement where she's this big fucking creature, and out in like the greenhouse, it just sent chills down my spine. It was very effectively creepy as hell.
When John Trent goes down into the basement and sees her, the monster, like you could definitely see the creature creators from The Thing. That was definitely a Thing-esque monster that they had created.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like inspired by. Cause I don't think it was the same makeup team, because I think that K&B did the makeup on this.
Okay,
but like, I also became fascinated that I want to do a triple feature at some point, because this is apparently the third installment of John Carpenter's unofficial Apocalypse trilogy, which I didn't know existed until now, where it's The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and this.
Huh.
Where it's supposed to be him commenting on 3 different stages of the apocalypse.
Interesting.
So it's interesting that you made that connection with The Thing. And then Prince of Darkness is one of the ones I haven't seen as well.
I have not either. I've seen The Thing. This one.
Well,
obviously.
then we might have to add that to our own personal shame lists. But no, the whole thing with the old lady just creeped the shit out of me. And then like with the angry mob running outside the church, it's like whatever he was channeling when he made The Fog, he was channeling again making this, because it had a lot of very similar atmosphere. And that's what Carpenter does better than most other filmmakers. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Wes Craven, but he can't create the same type of atmosphere that John Carpenter can.
I loved like little things like the painting in that hotel that changes slightly at first, but then you have the Cthulhu creatures in it by the end, and just that unease of things that should not be alive that have a life to it. It could easily. I also think they paid the right amount of attention to it. That's something that many filmmakers could very easily overly emphasize. I tend to like when they're underemphasized for people that are paying attention to go, wait a minute, wasn't that a little different? But he pointed it out enough that clearly the average viewer would see it and notice it, but without, oh, this is so significant, and spoon feeding it.
It was subtle enough that by the end, when they made it very obvious, like at that point it felt earned, but it wasn't like a horror trope now where like you'd be looking at the painting and then it'll quickly turn its head and look at you. Like it was just subtly changing. And I feel like the reason he did it the way he did, where at the end where he, the last time you see it, it made it very obvious, because it's kind of the Hitchcock model, where Alfred Hitchcock, his perspective was, since he grew up with in Europe, where things didn't have to be spoon fed to a lot of them, he would make his films subtle enough that 80%, if not 90% of the audience would get it. But then he would add some sort of explanation in later on, and people would be like, "Well, Hitch, why'd you do that?" He's like, "Because I want to get 100% of the audience."
Okay.
So like that's why at the end of Psycho they have that speech explaining Norman Bates and his mental state. He didn't need it,
right?
But if he wanted to get 100% of the audience on board, he added it. And I feel like that's kind of the John Carpenter way of doing things, where he's like, I've got 90% of the audience. Let's get that extra 10% who are dummies.
Okay.
Or who aren't paying attention. Real quick, I'm on the Wikipedia page, and I noticed that Hayden Christensen played the Paperboy. That's funny.
What?
Hey, kid.
Yeah.
You want a paper? Have you been in an accident?
Yeah.
Want me to get somebody?
No, just point me to the highway.
Straight up.
Hey, kid. You ever hear of Hobbs End?
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, that was a very change in pace from going to Hitchcock to Hayden Christensen. I think now it's time that we should get to the big theme of the movie,
Sure.
Nick. John Carpenter commenting on religion.
Right, and pop culture as religion.
Yeah, which is one of my favorite. It's the reason this after Halloween. This is probably one of my favorite John Carpenter endings of all time because of that.
Well, it does what a lot of people have a lot of criticisms about the remake of The Ring, or the American version of The Ring.
It's the only one I've ever seen.
I really enjoyed it.
I thought it had a lot of good style to it.
Yeah, I really liked what both The Ring and this did in bringing the viewing audience into the stare. Like, it made them a palpable part of it, where by watching this film, you are now subject to the scary things that you saw in it. But yeah, they made a lot of very overt references to the Bible and church, and how Sutter Kane's work is the new Bible. And when Sutter Kane makes Trent the delivery boy, he's kind of turning him into the modern Moses. Take my word and disseminate it amongst the people.
I don't remember where I copied this from, so I'm sorry. I forgot to put a credit. So if the author of this sentence is listening, I apologize. I'm not stealing your work. I'm giving you credit. Just I don't remember who you are. And they said, what if religious texts like the Bible gained all their power from the herd who read and believed in them? And what if a populist horror novelist was able to tap into the hive mind consciousness to the point that his reality becomes interchangeable with our own tangible existence? Yeah. And I feel like that explains the film very well. Like, it's almost like, have you read American Gods? I know they just made a television show
I have
off
not.
of it. But the whole idea of it is, these gods. Say I came from Ireland. Well, it's a bad example. I don't know what they believe in. Say I came from India. And I brought with me my gods. I brought Shiva with me. I brought Gishnu and whatnot. And that's what I believed in. That's what I put my faith in. But then after living in the United States, railroads are formed. And I start putting my faith in that because that's what's going to bring me my salvation. Shopping malls are constructed. And I start putting my faith in that. So my gods become smaller and smaller and less powerful. And they're just humans now at this point. And these other powerful gods that I put my faith in are now stronger. That's the point of American Gods. And that's what it kind of reminded me of here. It's like, the Bible was once what everyone put their faith in. But what if I've written the new Bible? What if more people read me? It's like almost a Freddy Krueger idea where it's only powerful if you believe in it.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
Whoa. I also love that line in the since it's this felt like the most. Granted, they mentioned religion throughout, the Bible and everything, so it's not an overt. It's not like this is a hidden theme or anything. But the line that really got to me was when and to me, my notes is Carpenter commenting on religion ? And it's when the man in the bar kills himself in front of John Trent and says, "I have to. He wrote me this way."
Yeah.
He lost all control of what he needs to do because that's what the higher power thinks he should do.
But did he lose control? Because in order to lose control, you have to have had it in the first place. And if he is purely, if we are to believe what Sutter Kane is telling us, that he has created Hobbs End and everyone in it, and John Trent for that matter,
Wait, John Trent wasn't real?
According to Sutter Kane, no. When he's in the church, I don't remember if it's the confessional conversation or it's...
It might have been.
I want to say it's just after. He basically tells him, no, you're one of my creations, and therefore you will do everything that I tell you to do.
And I thought that was a great swerve.
Yeah.
But no, you make a good point. It's kind of like when you play The Sims and you take away free will. They can't do anything without your control.
Yeah.
It's God mode, man.
Yep. And Sutter Kane himself admits that he didn't even realize that he had this power, that he was writing these books thinking that he was just making it all up, but then came to learn that he was merely a puppet of the great old ones. Yeah,
and it's also interesting too, so John Trent is a figment of Kane's imagination.
All right.
So Trent has to go to Hobbs End to get the manuscript to bring back to Arcane Publishing to further end the humanity. Does anyone find that that's just a weird circle of like, okay, you're writing this character to come get the book that you are currently writing to bring back to the publishers so you can end the world because you are being controlled by an ancient race of monsters?
You got
like it just
a real
it's
chicken
like,
or the
first?
egg situation.
Like even to this day, it's like as much as I love this movie, I'm sitting there thinking it's like, wait, what? Especially because Styles has read most of it anyways, but Styles I guess isn't even real. But it's like, wait, what?
I'm losing me, John. I'm losing me. It's one of those things. It's a lot like Donnie Darko in that sense. Like I could see every time watching this, working very hard mentally to figure out if there is a plot hole or not, and every time coming to a different conclusion.
See, I feel like the thing is like I feel like this film. This might sound bad, but I feel like I know exactly what I mean, even though it doesn't make any sense. This film is one giant plot hole, but it doesn't try to hide the fact that it's a giant plot hole.
Right. It embraces it.
Nothing about this film should make sense, and to a lot of people, it doesn't. Like, I'm still on the Wikipedia page, and apparently, in the book "Lurker in the Lobby: A Guide to the Cinema of H.P. Lovecraft." They wrote that no film reviewed in this book is so strongly divisive as In the Mouth of Madness. This is a film people either love or hate. There seems to be no in between. The film's weakness is the generic rock soundtrack composed by and performed by John Carpenter. You are wrong,
right,
sir.
Yeah, boo.
And the disjointed script and apparently left the actors as confused as the plot. And I was like, is that necessarily a bad thing though? Because it's kind of like the Doctor Who thought process of it, where the only actor that knew the entire plot of what was going to happen in the story was the actress who played River Song.
Spoilers.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
She has said that she's the only one who knew everything that was going to eventually happen. Everyone else is left in the dark, so they can act accordingly. If you're making a film like this, I don't want my cast to know what's going on. They need to react as it's happening, and I think that's what makes Sam Elliott's his reaction at the end of the film, where he's sitting watching the movie, so fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how his face was. How I felt watching this entire movie. Just...
I think if you're looking for the plot to make more sense, you're not. I mean, you could word it as it's not the movie for you, but it's okay that there's this possible plot hole. You'd have to work hard to convince me that it is a plot hole. It's just cyclical. It feeds into itself. It's the Ouroboros of plots.
However, there was a moment when I watching this. I don't know if it was me or it was Amanda. It was either me or my wife that said when we were watching it, because at the end, I don't know if it was Kane or I think it was Kane. He was like, well, once everyone reads this book, they're all going to be, essentially humanity's going to end. And it was either me or Amanda who were like, well, what about those who don't read? And then without a moment later, they're like, oh, the movie comes out this week.
Boom. Ask and you shall receive.
But then I started thinking, it's like, wait, didn't they have to read it to write the script? And I just have this crazy idea of monsters writing and directing the film.
And I love how they had the movie poster that Trent walks by that has it listed as a New Line Cinema production. You see all those credits right in
Directed by John Carpenter, produced by Sandy King, and written by Michael DeLuca, who are the three real people. And
that's one of those little details that helps convince you by the end that you are now subject to this madness.
It is so deliciously meta that I was just wallowing in, just feed me more.
I want to bathe in the meta.
Yes. I also want to comment real quick on Arcane Publishing. That just sounds very Lovecraftian.
Oh yeah. And when one of the first scenes when Trent goes in to meet with Charlton Heston and Styles, and one of his first lines is, "Are you familiar with our Kane?" Meaning our author Sutter Kane. But Arcane is, as most of you know, is this the palpable power behind supernatural magic, that. So to say, are you familiar with Arcane? it's Trent, whose character is defined by his ability to separate fiction from the real world. He spends the entire film saying, yeah, but that's pretend and this is real life. He's asked right up front, are you familiar with this mystical magical power?
Yeah. And while I was watching this movie, even though it's so very obviously inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, and to a lesser but almost equally strong sense Stephen King.
Yeah.
I'm a filmmaker. I couldn't help but think about, like, what would I do if I were given the ability to remake this? Like, while H.P. Lovecraft is more popular now than he ever has been, there's a lot of things that keep the same, but, like, how would I want to update this? And the only thought I could do is swap out the Stephen King references for Clive Barker.
Sure.
And I say this because the more you learn about Clive Barker, the more he sounds like Sutter Kane. He's a guy that just kind of like holds himself up in his house, paints, draws, and writes just these crazy things. Because he has said in an interview one time, he said he doesn't have writer's block, and he wishes he could, because he said he feels like there's someone grabbing him by the back of the neck, telling him he has to write this.
Huh.
And just the type of imagery that he has and the super psychosexual vibes, it's like he'd be the perfect type of person to be part of this.
And it's funny that we were talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and we had talked about very briefly New Nightmare, because New Nightmare does kind of a similar thing to what we're talking about, where Freddy begins terrorizing the actors that play the characters in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. It breaks that wall, and the scare comes into our reality as a viewing audience.
Yeah. Like, I honestly feel like if the entire Nightmare on Elm Street series was just the original and New Nightmare, it'd probably be a perfect
but Freddy's dead,
two
man.
films.
You would lose out on Freddy's dead.
I love Freddy's Dead, but it's not as well made of a movie as New Nightmare is. I actually think New Nightmare is a better movie than Scream. And it's Wes Craven doing a similar story.
Scream is its own beast. It is such a unique thing that doesn't really fit fully into horror, and it doesn't really fully fit into comedy. But I've never been able to place it. It's enjoyable. I like it, but it always kind of floats for me.
Yeah, it's always a movie and series just in general that I've always liked, but I don't love. Like, I don't go crazy for it. Yeah, it's always been weird. I think that's the reason I've always preferred New Nightmare, because it just honestly feels like Wes Craven taking a very similar meta approach, but treating it far more serious. And honestly, about a character, I think characters he cares more about.
Okay.
Because, he created Freddy, he created Nancy, he created all these characters, he created that universe. Scream, he was a hired gun.
Okay.
And not saying he didn't make it his own, but I don't know.
Yeah. We should get him on the show.
He's dead.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll still get him on the show.
We will have
That's
to...
right, I remember that.
Yeah, we'll have to, raise the dead. Which... We're going to become a far more popular podcast if we figure that out.
Right.
On this week's episode, Jim Morrison and Wes Craven. No, Jim, don't attack me.
So, how badly when they're at the church, and all of the townsfolk, led by Vigo the Carpathian, show up, fire off his shotgun, and the Dobermans start coming around the corner, how badly did you want to say, Smithers, release the hounds?
I hadn't thought of that, but my first thought was when they were attacking people, and I was like, the puppy just wants to play, because they never looked angry. And then I hopped over onto the commentary, and John Carpenter's talking. He's like, I hate working with dogs, especially in attack scenes. They never look real.
At first, I was made it because 3 came around the corner at first, and it had, to me, a bit of a Cerberus vibe to it. But then when others pour in after it, I think if it was an intentional thing, they wouldn't have had those follow-up dogs.
To me, it just felt like an old trick that they used to use in old movies when they only have, like, say, 5 people and they want to make it seem like an army and they just have them running around a circle.
Totally.
Because it just kept coming and in weird waves. I was like, they're just running around.
It's the Hanna-Barbera background loop.
Yeah. I did that. I used that one time when I was in high school. Me and a friend were making a movie, and like he needed to have like goons jump out of a van, but he had 3 goons. And it needed to seem like it was like enough to storm and take over a school. So it's like, let's just open both sides of the van and just have them run around. Yeah. What he made it better is the sun's going down, so you could see their shadows going around the van.
We did a lot of split screen work. We'd set it up on the tripod and have half of them or all of them on one side, and then we'd do another take with all of them on the other side with slightly different costumes. And
that's smart. I wouldn't have thought of that. It worked better than that would have worked better than my van trick. Oh, anything else about In the Mouth of Madness before we get to suggestions and then Vinegar Syndrome?
I don't think so. As always, I really enjoy lighter hands, and the fact that, especially given his track record with movies like The Thing, I liked that it wasn't a creature feature. I liked that he took Lovecraft and could have very, very easily thrown in a bunch of creepy Cthulhu-esque monsters, but really the only time they used it was when they needed to chase John Trent through that hallway. And even then, you never really got a clear picture of it. It was these quick bursts kind of through the windows of this tunnel.
Yeah, it's very gothic, which I appreciated, and like... while there are creatures, like you said, it's not a creature feature. It's lots of suspense and madness and so much meta that I just want to bathe in it.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, especially after the whole Star Trek fiasco.
I didn't dislike Star Trek. What are you talking about?
Oh, speaking of, I had a buddy come up to me. It was on our game night, and he kind of took me aside, and he's like, "So I've been listening to the podcast. I really like it." Hi, Randy.
And you had your fist balled up
ready
to say something.
Ready to swing. Hi, Randy. By the way.
Hey, Randy.
And he wanted to mostly talk about Buffy. How, kind of saying, by the way, Buffy gets a lot better. Like, don't judge it based on the pilot. And so I think that was kind of our analysis of our Next Generation experience, too, was I said multiple times, in hindsight, we really shouldn't have watched the pilot. So we might want to rethink when we do TV shows to possibly steer away from pilots, because it seems to be kind of a catching point for us.
Well, the only reason I usually stick to the idea of doing a pilot, and then I like to try to do, like... If it's not a TV show that has a consistent story, we can, like Star Trek, we could jump around. But the only reason the pilot is important to me, because like in case there's things introduced that are important.
Sure.
Like for example, like if we ever do Cheers, I don't think the pilot's going to be important in that case. Maybe, I don't know. Or like if we we don't need to do The Simpsons realistically, right. But say if we had never seen The Simpsons, the pilot's not important. The pilot is like probably the worst episode. In a lot of ways. So, like, I for Buffy, I guess maybe it wasn't necessary for Buffy because we knew the characters from the movie, but, so that was a goofy decision, but I still felt strongly that the pilot for Star Trek was needed.
Yeah. And, I think one of our other references when we were discussing that was something like Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead, where they are very... they're building a narrative. It's not a bunch of one-offs.
Yeah.
Though, so though again, like when you watch The Walking Dead, you know that they're in a zombie apocalypse. That we don't necessarily need to see how it plays out, but we might want to.
No, well, something like The Walking Dead. Like, say if someone some Walking Dead fan picked their 3 favorite episodes, it might only be a favorite episode because of connections they've made with characters they've gotten along with.
Yeah.
See, like I've got favorite episodes of Doctor Who that have really nothing to do with the character. Like, what was that? What was that? Stone Angel episode? Was it Don't Blink?
Don't blink. Blink and you're dead. Don't turn your back. Don't look away. And don't blink. Good luck.
Oh yeah, the Weeping Angels.
I might be getting the title. Yeah, I might be getting the title wrong. I was like, I love that episode. You don't have to see a single episode of Doctor Who to appreciate that.
No,
episode.
I'm pretty sure it was called Don't Blink, where they're in the past and the Doctor is like writing messages to them through the.
And he shows up in like the last 5 minutes, which I thought was cool. But anyways, I think from here on out we'll pick and choose about which ones.
That's
that
not
we
to
feel
say
like
that we won't do the pilot if we feel it's necessary.
Yeah.
But he was definitely under the impression that, like, ooh, you start with the pilot. Oh, yeah, that's gonna color your experience.
Well, at the same time, too, since this is a TV show about experiencing things for the first time, I feel like anyone who would have watched it on television had to start with the pilot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad for when we did Twin Peaks that we did the pilot. Had we jumped into something else like
Twin Peaks without the pilot is I couldn't even imagine. Like, I can't imagine. There's been people have told me that they jumped right into Fire Walk with Me without watching the show, and I'm like, oh God, how did you do that?
I did end up with some Twin Peaks spoilers though with the new series coming out, so I've kind of context clued, picked out who killed her, but I'm excited to see the process.
Well, off air, you'll have to tell me.
Who
I
I
won't
think
tell
it
you
is.
whether or not you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't tell you. I'll be like, oh, interesting. So before we talk about Vinegar Syndrome and one of their releases, should we give each other our recommendations for the week?
Yes, I think I didn't put any together, and I think doing a every other, bounce around. This was on your Shamelist, so now it's your turn to turn it around on me and challenge me.
Okay. So my thing is, I'm not just picking, let's see, how many do I have? 5. I'm not just picking 5 films that, I wonder if Nick's seen this. I tried to tailor, like, if I was doing a double feature.
Okay.
Like, I'd show In the Mouth of Madness and blank, or blank and In the Mouth of Madness for a different reason.
Okay.
So, my first pick, and some of these aren't as deep as I feel like they could be, but I was going more for thematics.
Sure.
So, my first one is based on the idea... The thing that I picked up in the Mouth of Madness is about an author who's controlling a world, and I liked that idea, and and I went with the Stranger Than Fiction.
Ah, yes,
because
I have seen Stranger Than Fiction. Great movie. I love it.
Because I like the idea of that this author's controlling this world, and then she doesn't want to, but she has to.
Yeah, I love the idea of them trying to figure out what type of book he's in order to determine how he should handle the situation. I loved that.
And I also think it'd make a really off-the-wall, but I think kind of appropriate double feature within the Mouth of Madness.
Beautiful.
My second option, I was going off with the Lovecraftian themes, but I didn't want to choose something too overly Lovecraft. So I went, and it's also very meta, I went with Cabin in the Woods.
Everybody ready? The show on the road!
Doesn't even show up on the GPS. It's unworthy of global positioning.
That's the whole point. Get off the grid, right?
Hello? I'm thinking this thing doesn't take credit cards.
Yes, that's Whedon again, right? Or he wrote it. I have seen Cabin in the Woods.
It's not explicitly Lovecraft, but if you've seen the movie, I think you might kind of know what I'm talking about with the there's without saying the words, the old ones, there's a lot of references to it.
Well, and it certainly speaks to our earlier conversation in this episode about horror film tropes. I mean, that is the film of horror tropes.
Yeah, but used with a great efficiency.
It's
with
such a smart
reason.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I was thinking of the Stephen King element.
Okay.
Which, there's a lot I can go with Stephen King, because he's the only writer who writes about writers as much as he does. But I decided to go a different method with it and go with Monkey Bone, because Stephen King is in it.
Oh, I have not seen Monkey Bone.
Show me the monkey! Check that monkey!
Stu Miley is the creator.
The man behind the monkey.
Monkey Bone is his creation.
I love your ways.
Stu was about to have it all until it all came crashing down.
I don't remember if it's actually Stephen King or if it's the person playing Stephen King. I should look that up real quick. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I can't comment about if the movie's legitimately good, but I liked it a lot as a kid. And it's directed by Henry Selick, which is cool, and it's about an artist who gets sent to hell.
Is that starring Brendan Fraser?
Yes, it is.
Okay, my wife has seen that one.
And there's a great line of Stephen King where he's like afraid of the dark. He gets stuck in hell, in a jail cell with Attila the Hun, Jack the Ripper, and Stephen King, who's afraid of the dark.
And I want to say,
it's not Stephen King playing himself though, but still.
I want to say one of the kids in the hall, Dave. Is in it, or maybe voices Monkey Bone. I can't remember.
Dave Foley.
Foley.
He's in the movie, as is Rose McGowan, Whoopi Goldberg, Bridget Fonda.
Nice.
I liked it a lot as a kid, and I don't know if it still holds up, but Doug Jones plays a Yeti. What's not to like? And Bob Odenkirk is in it. I got a couple more. So Monkey Bone was the last one. This one is very on the nose.
Okay.
But I chose it with reason. Are you familiar with the TV show Masters of Horror?
I didn't actively watch it, but I'm aware of its existence.
Okay, so it's the idea of it's an anthology TV show. Every episode's an hour long. It gives
Tales of the Crypt-esque.
It gives a master of horror a chance to do an original story. Essentially an hour movie.
Okay.
And John Carpenter did one that I really like, while a little flawed, called Cigarette Burns.
Okay. The absolute end of the world. The government seized it and destroyed it.
I'm a bit obsessive. I want you to find a print for me.
We are a part of the film. If it had been destroyed, we would know.
And it stars who's that big dude from Walking Dead that everyone's in love with right now?
The guy that plays
I can think of the character name, Daryl.
Okay, Daryl. That's he was in Boondock Saints too.
Yeah, that guy. Well, anyways, he's in this, and this is like maybe right after Boondock Saints, when he's still kind of a young pretty boy. He plays a former drug addict who is now a rare film collector.
Nice.
Who owns a small theater, and he finds out about this film that only one copy was ever in existence, and it was lost because the filmmaker killed himself making it, and it drove him nuts. So a film collector by the name I don't remember the character's name, but it's played by Udo Kier, hires him to find this film print. And so he can watch it, and it's all tied into like Arcane and Angels and shit. So it's very similar,
cool,
but different in its own right. And I think it'd make it would be a very appropriate double feature. And then I got one more.
All right,
my last one, playing into the whole author aspect of it, is Dario Argento's Tenebrae.
Was killed with a razor, and your book's pages stuffed into her mouth.
Can I ask you something? If someone is killed with a Smith & Wesson revolver, do you go and interview the president of Smith & Wesson?
Peter, you can't let me down now. We're within 2 days of making a deal. Please, stay just until Friday.
My life is in danger. There's no deal in the world worth risking my life for.
Not anxiety or fear, but freedom. You wrote those words, page 46. Freedom to strike again, Peter.
Listen, don't hang up. We have to talk.
You told me how, Peter Neal. You and me together. We've just begun.
It is a giallo film from the 80s about an author who's someone's murdering people based on the way that happened in his book. So he's tied up into this murder mystery, and Dario Argento and John Carpenter are good friends, so there's some similar styles.
What was the name of that one again?
Tenebrae. It's Tenebre.
Okay.
Tenebrae.
Cool. 3 out of 5. I've seen 2 out of 5. Not bad.
Not bad. Monkey Bones, Cigarette Burns, and Tenebrae. That's not a bad watch list right there.
All right. Well, why don't you tell me a little about our new sponsors here and the film you saw?
All right. Well, normally I'd write something up because I love in podcasts when they write up a thing about their sponsors. But I thought their website says it so perfectly that I'm just going to read off their website. So, real quick, Vinegar Syndrome is a film restoration and distribution company with a catalog of hundreds of feature films produced primarily between the 1960s and 1980s. Founded by Ryan Emerson and Joe Rubin, Vinegar Syndrome has been acclaimed by the New York Times, Village Voice, Dangerous Minds, Fongonist Files, and many others as one of the premier independent genre film-focused distribution companies in the world, and was noted by Alamo Drafthouse Theaters as perhaps the most important home video label in the world of genre films. Under their What They Do section, it says, our work has resulted in the digital restoration and preservation of over 500 feature films, more than any other independent studio. We also work closely with several archives and institutions such as the Academy Film Archive, the Library of Congress, UCLA, the Walker Art Center, and more. Our in-house lab partner, OCN Digital Labs, affords us the capability to perform the highest quality digital film restorations achievable on titles that in many cases would otherwise deteriorate beyond the point of saving. Our goal in every restoration we do is to try and bring each film back to its original intended theatrical exhibition quality, and to make the vast treasures in our archives available to fans and film lovers of all generations. What's cool is that the telecine they use to like scan the film is the one that Peter Jackson used on Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
And in case anyone's wondering why the name Vinegar Syndrome, their namesake is a constant reminder of what we're fighting against. Simply put, the term vinegar syndrome describes a chemical reaction that deteriorates motion picture film over time. Film preservation is a race against time, especially with long-neglected genre and underground films.
Nice. A champion of the forgotten ones.
Yeah, so they do a lot of like grindhouse and exploitation films, some horror stuff, and then honestly a lot of porn. It's cool because they do like a monthly box, and it's a bit pricey. It's like $80, but you get like 4 or 5 DVDs and Blu-rays in it, and you can actually get it shipped to you in a grindhouse canister, one that was actually used in a theater to hold film prints.
Oh, awesome.
So they are a really cool company. They just sent me a copy of the movie Psycho Cop Returns, which I got too late for us to talk about on the show. But I thought when I met them at a convention, and I bought a couple films from them because they found out I work for Lloyd Kaufman at Troma. So they're like, well, you can't work for Troma and not have these movies in your collection. So they cut me a good deal on some of these movies. And I'm also a slasher movie aficionado, especially from 1972 to 1989, which is like the golden age of slashers. The revisionist slashers in the 90s don't do it as much for me. But this is one I'd never seen, and it came out the year after Friday the 13th and just a couple years after Halloween, so it's still like fresh.
Right, yeah.
It's called Graduation Day. Directed in 1981 by Herb Fried, who is a rabbi.
I'd have to look that guy up. I would love to have a beer with him.
That's all you have to know. The plot concerns a high school track team that's being suspiciously murdered by a masked assailant after an accidental death of one of their teammates occurred during a track meet. And it's, in a lot of ways it's kind of a paint by numbers slasher film, but not in a bad way, because it's a lot of fun. There's this coach that they keep talking about, is played by Christopher George, who is a big name in the the low budget horror scene from the 80s. He pushed his team quite a bit, so much so that like one of his runners was trying so hard to win her race that she just fucking collapses and dies at the finish line.
Okay.
And she's dead. She's dead as soon as they go in and check on her.
But did she win the race?
I believe so.
Okay,
yes. You can't die and be a loser.
Right.
So what happens then is her sister returns home from the Navy to accept an award on her behalf during graduation. And she also is trying to get back at the coach. So, there's some red herrings thrown in. Is it the sister? Is it someone else? Is it the coach? We don't know. Because in a lot of ways, it's your typical whodunit, which I personally think are the best type of slasher films. The slasher films where like they tell you who the killer is right away, and then you're just watching that person kill.
Yeah.
Just feel kind of mean-spirited to me. Like, if I know, like, say this is a slasher film, and they show me you killing someone, and it's just I'm watching you kill people throughout the span of the film, it seems really mean-spirited and like, well, where's the suspense? I like not knowing. I like the whodunit aspect. Yeah. And because continue.
For me, horror for me, when I enjoy it, it's all about what you don't see. It's about what you're wondering is on the other side of the door or calling from the other end of the. And that was the name's escaping me. The director of Hostel and
Eli Roth.
That's what I could never like. That dude just lays it all out there, and I guess if you're into watching like just brutality, then he's your guy. But like it had no mystery to it. There was never that. I was never scared. I was just grossed out.
I will say though, in defense of Hostel, you don't actually see as much as your brain tells you did.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because I rewatched it recently, and I was like, oh, I could have sworn this scene was a lot gorier, or I saw a lot more, and he's really good about deliberate cuts.
Okay.
And I also think while you're right, there's not a whole lot of mystery about what's being done, the last 20 minutes is really tense and interesting. But yeah, it's still not a great film.
Tension,
but there's some,
I'll certainly grant him.
When the one character is trying to escape the place that has him kidnapped, is probably the best part of the film.
Okay.
But no, Graduation Day is interesting because like it was confiscated in the UK. While it was not prosecuted for being too obscene, it was still confiscated and during the video nasty panic, because there are some really gruesome deaths, but not in like a way like you're like, oh, that's so real, but more like it's so over the top and crazy, it's gross, right, but it's cool kind of like way.
And you did some of that style. Again, I have not seen Graduation Day, but certainly in Friday the 13th, those series that with him just like crushing somebody's head until their eyeball pops out, and even though you can see the spring behind it as it shoots towards the screen, but there's those like, oh, well, that was clever, Jason. Good for you.
Yeah, like that's the thing I like about Jason. He's a clever killer. He if he ever you never feel like the man gets bored of what he's doing.
You can tell he enjoys his work.
Yeah, but some specifics about this disc is they made it look gorgeous. There is no way, there's no world that Graduation Day should have ever gotten a 4K transfer presented in its original aspect ratio for the first time ever since it's been released. Because Troma put it out a couple of times, but it was never looked as good as it does now. Yeah, it's like there's no way the film should have looked as good as it did, and I'm going through the features right now. Like I said, so you got amazing 4K restoration, which came from the editor's 35mm print he had laying around. So he had a perfect pristine print just laying around. And then there's interviews with the editor, which is really fascinating because he talks about like how he had to manipulate some of the scenes to add some tension, and just he wanted to get kind of artsy with it. And that's the thing that's interesting about some of these early slasher films is sometimes they're made by art house directors,
sure,
who honestly are just trying to make a buck, but they can't not make something creative. Right. So like he talks about his trying to add some interesting editing into the film. And they got interviews with the star played by a woman named Patch McKenzie, which is an amazing name. and she's kind of great too, because she's like, I don't know why people still care about this movie, but I'm glad they do. Right. but then she's also talking about like how deep her, like, since she was a new actor at the time, how deep her research went into it and how hard she was trying. Like,
this was her big break.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just funny listening to her talk about like what made this so important to her. So, if you're a fan of slasher films, I highly recommend Graduation Day, because while it's got the Trauma name on it, it's not nearly as goofy as some Trauma films are. Like, feel like this is one that's trying to take itself very seriously, and it's just got this great 80s aesthetic to it that a lot of people try to copy, but there's just something so genuine about it. I don't know, it's genuine because it was made in the 80s.
Because
but
it
like,
was literally genuine.
I'm always trying to figure out like what about the aesthetic. It's not the clothing, it's not the music. There's something about the way that the films look and how they're shot. And some of it's to do with film stock, but I'm always like, what do these films do right versus the ones that are copying them? What do they do wrong?
A lot of little things, I'm sure, is what goes into that.
Yeah, so that one's great. Next episode, I want to talk about the one they just sent me, which is their new release of Psycho Cop Returns. But until then, that's Graduation Day, and we can post a trailer for it on the page.
Cool. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to throw down before we wrap up here?
Not really. I think this was a really fulfilling episode.
Yeah. Do we have we decided on something for next episode?
We have not, but since it's we're knocking something off of your shame list.
Okay. I think I don't have my list in front of me, so I think we'll make it a surprise.
Okay. I'm cool with the surprise.
All right. Obviously, we'll inform each other before it's time to watch it, but it'll be a surprise for the audience.
Yay! All right. Anything else, Nick?
I think that'll do it. As always, it's been a blast. It was so great to have an excuse to watch In the Mouth of Madness again.
I don't think we need an excuse at this point. I think this is going to be a movie that I need to put something on in the background when I'm doing dishes when we put In the Mouth of Madness on.
One of my favorite background noise films, Creepshow.
You know what? I've actually never seen Creepshow. And it's a shame because it's been on my shelf for a long time, and I've had a lot of opportunity. I almost saw it in a drive-in, but it started to rain, so I had to leave. I don't know. It's a movie. I always tell myself, I got to put on Creepshow. I've got to put on Creepshow. I've got to put on Creepshow. And then I never put on Creepshow.
I used to have both 1 and 2 on VHS in those great old, like, thick, soft plastic clamshell cases.
Oh, the clamshells. Oh, I love the clamshells.
Got those when I used to work at Goodwill.
We should start a band called the Clamshells.
Brilliant. Now all I have to do is learn how to play an instrument.
Same. Wait, you do play an instrument?
I do, yes. Just not well.
Well, you could probably play better than I can. It's going to be like that scene from Billy Madison where I'm just going to play one note and he's good.
He's good.
You have a good day at work, Nick.
Thank you. Something else Randy informed me of as we were discussing the podcast is he really appreciates how we say, all right, we're going to wrap up the show, and then we talk for 15 more minutes. And he said he hopes that never changes.
Well, it's hard to end a show when you're like, I don't know.
Don't know what we're doing.
No. There's not a dummy's guide to podcasting anywhere. And if there is, it's probably just technical.
Right.
It's not like how to actually formulate a show.
Well, and I never want to stop talking to you.
No, exactly. That doesn't sound weird. That sounds just completely honest.
Like total bros.
Yeah.
All right, man. Another good one. I look forward to the next episode when we talk about that movie we're going to watch.
Yeah. Party on, Nick.
Party on, Earth. Michael.